You won't believe what happened to me. I thought I'd finally found my little slice of peace when I closed on a quiet, shaded lot, wooded with oaks, perfect for a porch, some privacy, and a little time away from noise after years of renting cramped apartments next to people who treated late-night karaoke like a lifetime commitment. At 35, I was tired of watching rent checks vanish. I wanted roots, and this Meadowbrook Estates lot promised them. The real estate agent was almost too eager, calling this the opportunity of a lifetime. In hindsight, maybe that should have been my first red flag, but I was done being cautious. I signed. Keys in hand, I drove on to the empty land, already picturing the swing set and coffee spot. Then the Escalade pulled up. Pristine, massive, blaring dominance in every scratch of metal and each mirrored window. Out stepped Cheryl. I might as well have seen her on a glossy magazine cover. Icing perfect. She radiated expensive, polished power. She smiled at me, small and practiced, and then she began talking rules I'd never signed up for. Garbage bins must be hidden, she said. Mailboxes exactly 42 inches tall, and, most jarring of all, tree maintenance, paint color compliance, no black bins. I stared at her like a deer hitting glass. Why was she telling me these things? I didn't even have a mailbox yet. I smiled while she lectured me, this binder dropping into my hands. 5 pounds, tabbed like a law manual, civic commandments under HOA rule. As I flipped through rules about grass height, fence slats, and blush beige paint, my heartbeat synced with each flip of a page. She drove off, engine purring, her scent lingering like a warning. That's when my neighbor, the guy with dirt under his nails and a warmth that reminded me I had chosen the right place, leaned on his fence and said, "Nice to have a new young neighbor. You know, they planned a children's park around here in the 90s. Playground, trails, swings, vanished like mist." His tone wasn't sad or accusatory, just quiet. But when someone plants that seed, you can't ignore it. My heart turned from peaceful to curious overnight. 3 weeks later, a certified letter landed in my mailbox. Unauthorized construction. Immediate compliance required, or legal action to follow. I blinked. I hadn't built anything. I hadn't touched much beyond putting survey stakes in. But it said I was encroaching on HOA common land. I walked outside, looked at my empty lot, coffee cup in hand, thinking, what planet am I on? The next day I went to city planning. You know that smell. The fluorescent hum, stale air, cardboard file folders labeled decades old, dusty maps unfolded like secret histories. I pulled records. Cheryl had quietly bought a strip of land bordering my property, a public parcel no one seemed to claim. Dirt cheap, stamped, notarized, too convenient. It sat between my lot and the development boundary, like a buffer she'd preemptively secured. I spent weekends digging into property records. Cheryl had acquired 7 such parcels in the neighborhood, all public or surplus land, all at bargain prices. Each piece hugged prime locations. It was like she'd plotted a land war with compass and ruler while the rest of us slept. I talked to a planner, Ben, I think, but he shrugged. Public land sitting unused is public waste, he said. Just recognizing potential, right? But his shrug sounded like shared secrets behind a veil of disinterest, like it wasn't the first time someone had done this. I needed clarity, so I headed to the county archive, where old documents go to die. There I found a manila folder labeled Harmony Park, 1992. I pulled it out, pulse speeding. Proposal, funds, signatures, approved and built. A $2.3 million children's park with picnic areas and playgrounds, and then erased. I traced the original boundaries, right where Cheryl was pouring foundations for her mansion, swimming pool and all. Lines shifted, parcels redefined, records changed. History rewired. I took photocopies. When I looked over at construction crews digging what would become our neighborhood's newest private oasis, I felt like a witness to something buried. They replaced swing set foundations with concrete, I thought, watching cement flow where laughter used to echo. This wasn't property dispute. It was public memory being overwritten. So I wrote an official letter to the HOA board, including highlighted maps, redlined comparisons, original proposals, and current records. If there was a logical explanation, bad paperwork, clerical mix-up, public-to-private oversights, I was ready to accept it. If not, we'd need answers. I delivered it, and the receptionist took it without even looking up. Word travels fast when someone is poking at things meant to stay hidden. 2 days later, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. Her voice, sweetly practiced. "Connor, let's talk, in person." My gut dipped. I said I'd be happy to discuss it, at the HOA meeting. Silence. Then cold. "I don't think that's necessary." I hung up. I just crossed a line that made her recalibrate. Some things were meant to be hidden, and speaking up was apparently the only offense. The violations started rolling in. Grass height too tall, trash can improperly placed, my truck parked in violation. Even reading on my porch apparently endangered community safety. Photos, timestamps, witness statements. I tracked every notice like evidence for a case. I felt like I was living inside a crime scene just by holding a book in my yard. Posters started appearing on cars and bulletin boards. "Is our neighborhood safe?" Followed by vague suspicion towards newcomers who don't follow rules. No names, but I knew it was me. An invisible scythe hung over my reputation. Even friendly neighbors started averting their eyes. The social pressure weighed on me like bricks in my chest. My elderly neighbor eventually stopped by, voice low and eyes uneasy. "You know, maybe it's easier to just move on, Connor. People talk." I didn't want to hear that, but I did. It was easier to walk away. But how can you when you know walking away means giving up history and letting someone get away with erasing it? Then, flat tires. Every one of them silent, deflated. No note, no witnesses. Just deflated. The message was clear. "We can get to you any time." It was terrifying. I wanted to quit, but the thought of the park, the lost laughter, convinced me not to. I called Frank Miller, a lawyer who fights hard. Frank smelled like old case files and strategy. I unloaded everything on his conference table: plans, maps, photos, violation notices, letters. He looked me in the eyes and said the word, fraud. Actual fraud. I nodded, throat tight. "Are you ready?" he asked. "For what comes next?" I didn't know what that was, but I whispered yes. The first hearing was brutal. Cheryl's team painted me as unstable, obsessed. My documents about decades-old proposals were labeled conspiracy. The judge said, "Without proof of intentional fraud, this looks like a neighbor dispute. Case dismissed, pending new evidence." I left the courtroom feeling erased. Power isn't about truth. It's about money, connections, image. That night, I stared at her half-built mansion under its lights, an imposing glow. I lowered my head, wondering if truth mattered if you couldn't win with it. But Frank called. He found city council minutes from 1992, approved. Construction scheduled for 1993 to 94. Concordance. I looked at my phone as if it held a lifeline. Next, Frank introduced me to Richard Davies, retired HOA maintenance supervisor. We met at his modest home. He was jumpy, fear in every glance, like he believed she could come for him at any moment. But Frank persisted until Richard's conscience broke. He told us how he and others built the park, the playgrounds, picnic areas, the little amphitheater for summer shows. He described picnic parties, kids swinging, laughter ringing clear. Then Cheryl came along, labeling equipment dangerous, ordering removed. She halted benches, walked off trails. She called liability, created safety excuses, waited for families to stop using it. When ticketed and condemned, the city reclassified the land as abandoned. The documents were supposed to go to archives, but never did. "They just vanished," he whispered. He had photos, him, myself, families, kids playing under the old oaks, right where her foundation now lies. I held them, alive, vivid evidence of community erased. I carried those memories into the second hearing. The courtroom crackled with tension like a storm ready to break. Neighbors showed up, parents who remembered, elders who'd mourned, some wiping tears. Frank laid evidence like a rain of truth. Signed approvals, photos, logs tracing the systematic threats, maintenance memos with Cheryl's signature removing equipment. Then the comparison. On one side, kids laughing on swings. On the other, Cheryl's pool where swings once stood. Gasps echoed. I wanted to shout, they stole childhood joy to build their fantasy backyard. Cheryl, once composed, began visibly unraveling, blinking mascara, hands trembling. Frank asked, "Can you explain how a children's playground became your swimming pool?" No answer came. The silence said it all. The judge's voice cut through the air. Overwhelming evidence of fraudulent property acquisition and destruction of public assets. The defendant must forfeit all illegally obtained land, reimburse $2.3 million for park reconstruction and punitive damages. Mansion condemned, demolition within 30 days. The silence was louder than any applause. This wasn't a win. It felt like justice, carried on a breath's weight. Months later, I stood in that spot again. But now, playground equipment gleamed in afternoon light. Children's laughter replaced silence. A plaque read, "Harmony Park Restored 2024. A girl with pigtails ran past, chasing a ball. Her laughter echoed through what was once grief. I smiled, not with triumph, but because truth had finally taken root. Looking back, this wasn't about property lines or legal code. It was about the places that make us humans. Laughter, memories, shared playgrounds. Cheryl may have thought money could buy history until it couldn't erase it. And I learned that some things aren't for sale. Not childhood, not public memory, not community. Dreams don't vanish. They echo. Sometimes those echoes wake up a neighborhood.